Have you ever experienced books flying off the shelf or flying open in some way and paragraphs jumping out at you? Or similar experiences where God is trying to speak to you, God is trying to get your attention and tell you something. I have those experiences all the time. We have them all the time, but we don't recognize them. For the last few years, I've been paying attention. It's so in my face and so obvious. I see the breadcrumbs that God is leaving me. So there's this book that was given to me. It's called Living Clean, The Journey Continues. After I was given this book, I experienced it flying out of my hand, flopping open onto the floor, and the binding broke, and the page ripped. So I'll always remember what page it was. The last section of this book is love. Every time I pick this book up, whatever I read goes right along with what I'm experiencing in life, what I'm learning, what God is teaching me every single time. So I'm going to read to you the last section of this book and highlight the part that stood out to me the most. Unity is a practice of love. We rise above our judgments and come together no matter what. In the process, we learn forgiveness and reconciliation. We don't always forgive before we start to work together again, but we are obliged to make peace because we cannot easily avoid one another. Forgiveness is an action and a decision. We need a lot of forgiveness, and we also get to provide it. Forgiving is its own reward. We start to find peace within ourselves. When we are free of guilt, shame, and resentment, our minds can be still. Some of us struggle to give our permission to be happy, to give ourselves permission to be happy. We may not think we deserve it, or we may fear that we will stop working on ourselves. Some of us have been so unhappy for so long that it feels uncomfortable to let go of our bitterness. When we treat happiness as a spiritual principle, we can see its relationship to humility. Our ability to enjoy our lives is directly related to our willingness to let go of our self-obsession. If we think of happiness as a spiritual asset, we can see it as both a gift and a goal. We work toward it by letting go of those things that we can see standing in its way, and leave the rest to a power greater than ourselves. Humility and empathy are essential to a rewarding spiritual life. As we find the deep joy that comes to us through our practice of compassion, we find that happiness is much more available to us. I had to make a decision to be happy, but making that decision in a way that could really work meant having a foundation on which the happiness could rest. Walking through our own challenges helps us to find compassion for ourselves and others. As we develop our ability to feel and express empathy, we come to realize that the same spirit dwells in all of us, that none of us is more or less important than the other. We're all sick and suffering sometimes, no matter how long we have been clean. We all bring hope and answers sometimes, even when we don't feel it ourselves. Every day is a miracle. This is the part that it gets to you, that I read. It's the whole section. Love is an action word. Loving action takes many forms. Sometimes it's a warm hug. Sometimes it's telling someone the cold, hard truth. But when we act from love, with the intention of loving, it shows. It matters. We can feel it, and the people who surround us feel it. We can enjoy it, literally. It brings us into joy. When we finally trust that we can love and be loved without being hurt. We're able to tap into our connection to others and to the world around us. Staying clean for a long time means not just that recovery happens, but that life happens. We grow up and grow old, we raise families, change jobs, and navigate the world just because we are alive and clean. We come to understand that happiness is an inside job, a spiritual experience that can get stronger with recovery. We find that no matter what happens on the outside, joy can still live within us. A member shared, "I embraced my feelings and found comfort in them because I knew that they were part of my remaking. I was alive, as much as it felt like I might come undone. I had faith that it wasn't the end. I knew that absolutely nothing in the world mattered except love. I've wasted too much time not loving. Love is a form of intelligence. It's the intuition that brings us to the right words when there are no words. That tells us when to step forward and when to go back. We feel love when we speak truth. When we are in our higher power's will, we naturally carry a message, and the message we need finds us. When we clear away the defects that block the passage, we can be a clearer channel for love that surrounds us. We tap into a love that is greater than ourselves and find that we are able to do things we never thought possible. Brilliance comes through us. There's a saying in recovery that as we keep going, the road narrows. That's partly true. Our willingness to make the same old mistakes diminishes, and we know better than to act on our impulses much of the time. But that's not the end of the story. It's as if we pass through a funnel, and the way gets tighter and more uncomfortable as we begin to adapt to our new way of life. And then, without warning, it opens up and we are free. The road is no longer narrow. Sometimes it seems like there's no road at all. We move to our own rhythm, finding a pace and a direction that is right for us. The trip is inward and it never stops. We keep learning and growing, finding ways to live and to use our experience to help others. No matter how long we've been clean or have been a believer, there is still more for us to learn and more for us to share. Our first step placed on us is a path to awareness, connection, and serenity. We received much more than simple abstinence. We have been given an endless supply of principles to guide us as we travel through our lives. If you're not in recovery, insert your journey and your walk with Jesus. When you build on a foundation of Christ, this is what can happen for you. When you let go of control and you surrender to God, and you start letting Him help you clean up the inside, you're then ready to be of service to others. And when you don't put yourself first, when you put God first, you can have more compassion for other people. Everything's not always about you. That doesn't mean you do it to the point where you're depleted. If you're one of those, so was I. That's why we put Jesus first. We don't put ourselves first. We put Him first. And it opens us up to a whole new way of life.